and this is the big one. This is what I wanted to get Vish on the show for primarily. Everyone knows I'm down on Kyle. I've been down on Kyle for years, and I've been really hammering it the last week. A lot of my guests have been doing it too. Vish still thinks Kyle Shanahan is a good coach. And I want to know why, because I've heard a million people say why he's not a good coach, and I'd like to hear the other side of it. And Vish would do the best job. So, Vish, tell me why he's still a good coach.
So the first things first is I think a lot of the anti-Kyle arguments aren't about Shanahan as a coach. I think they're about Shanahan as a personnel decision maker. And we're going to talk about it a bit later, but there's been a lot of personnel missteps from the 49ers over the last 5 years in the Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch regime that are coming back to bite them in the butt. They didn't bite them in the butt in 2018 and 2019 when they had assets to redo and find solutions for those mistakes. But
also,
they're coming
5
back
years
to bite
of
them in the
mistakes,
butt
it
now.
all built up.
Right. When you have a few highly paid players on your roster, you have a veteran team, you don't have as many picks because you've used assets to make your team better. And we're seeing those mistakes in terms of personnel, in terms of correctly valuing and correctly identifying players you want to get and ensuring that, you're not giving up too much to go get them. Things that, having a GM instead of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, both guys who don't have vast personnel experience and vast experience in terms of valuing things correctly. Those are the kind of mistakes that we've seen them make. And I think those missteps are coming back to bite them in the butt. But as a coach, at this point, I think it's too early to say that he's not a bad coach. He's a bad coach. I think one of the reasons that a lot of people are ready to jump off the ship right now is because they overrated how good of a coach he was in the first place. And I'm part of that problem.
That's a good point.
But,
That's a good point. People talked about him like he was the next Bill Belichick. Colin Cowherd said that. The next Bill Belichick.
Not just Colin Cowherd, Mike Florio, a bunch of people said it. And not to mention, a lot of people felt, he's unequivocally a better coach than McVay. He's already better than Tomlin. He's already better than John Harbaugh. And, we're seeing results where he has maybe potential given his schematic genius, given his X's and O's brilliance, his ability to see the entire picture, the fact that he's shown the ability to develop coaches, which is one of the toughest things to do in the league. He's developed a lot of different coaches under him who have been able to implement his system and be successful elsewhere. So he's shown all of those traits, but the results basically have shown you that he's not an elite head coach at this point. He is not in the conversation with the Belichicks, the Andy Reid's,
big sample size now. Yeah.
The Mike Tomlins, the John Harbaughs, the McVays, those guys, he's a step under them. I think that's the biggest takeaway I have from this year. But I don't think that necessarily makes him a bad coach.
This is not elite. Think that he's not elite. Yeah.
I think he's not an elite coach. And I think what we're learning is that he cannot be in charge of the entire organization. The Niners have lost 3 games in a row, and Kyle Shanahan is the most powerful person in the 49ers organization. So it's very natural to just blame him. And he is definitely culpable. Like, you are the guy in charge, and your team has lost 3 games in a row. There's no doubt that he deserves
Find a solution.
blame. Absolutely blaming him is – I don't think he's somehow above reproach. He definitely deserves blame.
If they were in a 3-game winning streak, he'd get the credit. So that's the way it goes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. He deserves blame. He deserves to take criticism. But at the same time, I don't think it's the time to, just close the book on him and say he's a bad coach, because we still have to see if this team can bounce back. And so we have to see if he's going to be able to get this team to bounce back. That's part of his job. And I still think there's a lot of season to be played. I still think he's shown a lot of good things as a coach. I was quite happy that he went for it, honestly, on all 5 fourth downs. I think being aggressive on 4th down, whether the results were good or not, I thought it was the right decision, especially the fact that you were playing on the road and those were all favorable points analytically to go for it on 4th down. Okay, live with the results. It didn't work out, but I'd rather have that than you not going for it on 4th down and trotting out your punter to kick a 42-yard field goal. So
real quick. Let me just express why, and I've told you before, but why have serious misgivings about Kyle. It'll take me 20 seconds, and then you tell me what you think. 2 things. One, you said his X's and O's is unquestioned. Man, I haven't been impressed since 2019, and I know he has it in him. And it's like, I'm not saying he's lost his touch, because next week he could be phenomenal, but it's been a while. If you sit back and think about it, it's been a while. And then the other thing is, I still feel like it's year 5 and he doesn't have his guy at quarterback, and his indecision at that position, mixed with the fact that I really haven't been impressed with his coordinating the last year or two makes me really concerned. Really concerned.
His guy at quarterback, I mean, I'm the biggest Kyle Shanahan fan, but you and I have been criticizing that since the inception of this show. We talked about the fact, I feel like we talked about early in 2020 that we don't want to be sitting here in 2021 talking about Kyle Shanahan complaining about the quarterback.
That's a year 2 excuse, not a year 5 excuse.
Right. Yeah. So I'm with you on that. And to me, that's another personnel department issue where, and it goes back to just him having indecisiveness and with his personnel department in terms of his personnel decisions. And frankly, I prefer his indecisiveness because when he is decisive and he says, go trade up for this guy, they trade up way too much for the wrong guy. So, I prefer him to be indecisive.
Trey Sermon, I need him.
Decisive for that, but in terms of him as a coach, I mean, I felt like in 2020, there was a lot of very, very, very good play calling, especially down the stretch with them competing with CJ Beathard. I thought some of those games with Nick Mullins were really schemed up.
Better play calling than execution. You're right.
But and I'm with you. This year, there's not
when
as
they
many
got CJ in the game by the end of the season, that offense was clicking.
Right. And I think this year there's not as many people just running wide open down the field like there were in other seasons. And I think he's definitely
anymore.
Yeah, he's definitely not scheming it up, and just serving it up on a silver platter for his quarterbacks at the same way he did in 2019 and 2018 and even 2020. But at the same time, I'm with you on every single one of those things, but I don't think that necessarily makes him a bad coach at this point. I think that it just tells you and it tells me and it tells a lot of fans who are ready to just praise him as the next best thing since sliced bread that he has a lot of growth. And he has a lot of growth to do, and we'll see what he becomes. But at this point, he's certainly not the elite coach that he was crowned as after 2019, because we're seeing guys like McVay, go 9-7 with a hobbled roster that's changing their identity mid-season, that's moving off from like 4 highly paid players like Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, and Todd Gurley mid-season. We've seen Mike Tomlin have phenomenal success or 8-8 at least success with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, 2 quarterbacks who are as bad, frankly, as Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. And we saw him go 12-4 last year with Ben Roethlisberger, who was about as good as Jimmy G has been the last few years. Last year. So
they're awfully similar. Old Jimmy is an old Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, anyway.
If you look at their passing charts, they're both attacking the same areas of the field, which is within 0 to 5 yards over the middle of the field. But that's besides.
And they're both kind of brittle.
But the point is he's not an elite coach. I think that can be said with somewhat of certainty. He's not an elite coach right now, but I don't know if we can call him a bad coach yet. I think that we need to let the season play out, see, because they have an opportunity to bounce back. Again, this schedule is very favorable. If he's unable to bounce this team back, then I think these questions are become even more valid, and they're real.
Real quick, I think the hot seat gets people upset because there's no definition of the hot seat. But I think when people say that Kyle should be on the hot seat, that doesn't mean fire Kyle. It means you need to produce now. And when people say he shouldn't be on the hot seat, to me, what I'm hearing is he still doesn't have to produce. Like this, he can miss the playoffs this year, and that's okay. And then next year he'll have to produce. And to me, it's like, well, I mean, if that's how Jed feels, then he's not on the hot seat. But to me, I think it's freaking time to produce. I think it is. It's year 5.
So I mean, I think those people are right, but I don't think they're being realistic. Like technically, he's not on the hot seat, right? Because if you look at the way his contract is structured and everything, clearly Jed feels that okay, Kyle, you don't need to produce. You're okay. You're set in stone at least until next year when we get to see Trey Lance for a year. But if you look at his team's success level over the last 4 years, there is a little bit of pressure because again, Bill Parcells said it best: "You are what your record says you are." And at this point, Kyle Shanahan has 3 losing seasons out of 4, and that one season was incredible. And he built that roster and he put it together. But when him and John Lynch were given 6 years of job security and given 6-year contracts, it wasn't to build a team to have one good season.
Nope.
It was to build a team to have sustained success. And they've been talking about that over time. And right now they have one season to show for it.
These are the 49ers. They did it for about 20 years. The expectation is sustained, consistent success, even if it's not a Super Bowl every year. And I think what's rough is Niner fans are starting to realize, maybe franchises don't get it twice. Maybe we had it in the 80s and 90s,
I agree, and I think some of the criticisms of Kyle Shanahan, I mean, I didn't experience the 80s and 90s, so
Right.
I don't know what good 49ers football looks like, but I think some of the criticisms of Shanahan also have been misguided because people are frustrated with certain things he's doing and
We thought
frustrated
you'd be
with the
Bill
way
Walsh, and
he
you're
is
not
in
Bill Walsh.
pressers.
We want you to be Bill Walsh, but you're not Bill
Right.
Walsh. Yeah.
But I think people are also frustrated with his somewhat nonchalant answers in pressers, somewhat feeling like he does it sometimes. I understand the feeling, and I feel like that sentiment and the vibe that he at times gives off is if, I mean, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
Is
I got a 6-year
what can I do?
extension, man.
And I
I'm
think
good.
that
I'm gonna be
vibe
here. Yeah.
is what frustrates people to go to the extreme of he's not a good coach, he's not doing this.
Yeah.
It sometimes it feels like he's a little bit dispassionate or he's a little bit unempathetic to the issues or the problems that are there. What he's
His
not always
personality
guarded
is
with
very
what he
Chip
says.
Kelly-ish, man. Is very Chip Kelly-ish. He's
But
better. He's a better coach than Chip Kelly, of course. But the arrogance, the aloofness, the acting like you're a champion when you're not is basically the carryover there.
and I think that's really what's getting to people a bit more because it just feels like, oh my God, like you've just lost 3 in a row and you're so like it's just execution. But I look at it and say, well, what is he supposed to say? He's never been a guy to come out and you know give the media time and just go through every question like and give a very caring and honest and deep thinking answer to all of it. That's just not who he is. So
Oh, yes.
I don't expect him to do that in times of success nor in times of um, difficulty.